Hey Dragon Slayers. Today's video is about how eating nitrates and nitrites doesn't cause cancer, part 2. Don't forget to like and subscribe because it really helps the channel out. Let's get started. The US Department of Agriculture has set very strict guidelines on the amounts of nitrates and nitrites that can be in processed meats. Less than 500 parts per million can be used in the production process, and often only 10 parts per million remain in the finished product. This amount might seem worrisome until you hear how much nitrate and nitrite are in many other foods and in your saliva. For example, many vegetables contain much higher levels of these ions than processed meat. Celery and beet greens contain hundreds of times more than the average hot dog. Somehow, those groups that warn us of the dangers of processed meats overlook this fact. Imagine if experts told us to avoid vegetables because of their water content, but said it's perfectly safe for us to drink a glass of water. This makes no sense, and neither does the nitrate nitrite scare. More than 90% of the nitrites in the average person consumes comes from vegetables. Yep, you heard that right. Celery, beet greens, and arugula contain more nitrates than 100 hot dogs. If we are worried about nitrates and the compounds they produce, then we should strictly limit veggies rather than processed meat. Here's some information you might find surprising. The bacon and hot dog that says uncured, organic, and nitrate free contains more nitrates than the cheaper processed meat and hot dogs. Apparently, we're supposed to consider the nitrates in organic and nitrate free meats to be different because they come from celery and beet juice. A loophole in the US federal guidelines makes it permissible to ignore this nitrite, which is the exact molecule as the one that is used in cheaper processed meat. So if any company uses celery juice as their source of nitrates, it gets to call the product nitrate free, even though the final nitrate amount is much higher than in other products. Would you be surprised to hear that more than 90% of the nitrites you swallow each day do not come from the food at all, but from your own saliva? Well, it's true, and it really puts the final nail in this myth's coffin. Your body naturally produces hundreds of times more nitrites in your saliva each day than you could possibly get if you ate nothing but processed meat all day long. Should we outlaw your spit as a possible carcinogen? Hopefully, you're getting a sense of how foolish it is to be afraid of the small amounts of nitrates and nitrites left in processed meats. If you truly fear nitrates, then you should stop eating green veggies, and if you fear nitrites, then you should stop swallowing your own saliva. So, what does the research have to say about this? Well, the research supporting this lie is laughable. When the paper from MIT that started this scare was first published, the news media picked it up and ran with it. Lots of people heard the news. However, when the paper was later discredited and retracted, you barely heard a single peep. People who frequently eat processed meat tend to be less affluent than those who do not. They also tend to smoke more, exercise less, and do other unhealthy things. When researchers who performed the observational studies that showed a correlation between processed meat and cancer risk were collecting their data, they used those untrustworthy food frequency questionnaires, and they did not take into account those confounding variables. They did not control for these or other unhealthy behaviors. So the research is tainted. If someone who eats lots of hot dogs also smokes, drinks lots of beer, and never gets off the couch, are we surprised that their rate of having cancer is higher than someone who avoids hot dogs, doesn't smoke, works out, or drinks only rarely? No, not at all. Were the hot dogs to blame? Almost certainly not. This obvious defect in the research is ignored by most experts who try to give us advice about the dangers of processed meat. And that's what I've got for you guys today. Don't forget to like and subscribe because it really helps the channel out. And remember, guys, that together, you and I will slay the dreaded diabetes dragon.